This video is going to show you Solar Flowers Duality Dungeon on a Titan. For those that just want to see that, then skip the timestamps. Other than that, I can show you the setup and the weapons that you want to bring for this dungeon. So first of all, just knowing what you get into, what you're getting yourself into. This is the emblem when you do the Solar Flowers. It's called Untouched by Opulence, which not a lot of players have in the game right now. According to warmind.io, there's only nearly 32,000 players that have it, so there's not many players with it, and there's multiple reasons for that. With the dungeon itself actually being quite difficult, but there's things that can go against you as well. This run's going to be without Solar 3.0, and the reason for that is because of this mod here, Classy Restoration. So we're going to do a run without Classy Restoration. I could have done Solar 3.0 without using this mod at all, but I wanted to just not use Solar at all because of how powerful it is on a Titan, which means you're going to see how you would play this dungeon without sort of infinite health regen like that, with a mod like that. All right, so that's why I haven't done it on a Solar Titan. But if you want to do it on a Solar Titan this season, then you want to do it like while this mod's up, because next season it ain't going to be up. But what you need to understand for me is this video is going to help for the next season and maybe in the future, because the build that I'm going to use is going to be usable next season. So we're using Void 3.0, Sentinel Titan, right? Water Dawn Bubble, Tower and Barricade, Shield Throw Melee, Vortex Grenade, aspects of Bastion, Control Demolition. Fragments are Echo of Remnants, Echo of Undermining, Echo of Leeching. Echo of Leeching more for the plus 10 resilience. That's really why I've got that on there. In terms of the setup itself, we're using the Heart of Inmost light setup, which is very, it's got nerfed slightly, but it's still strong, still powerful, and I'll show you that in the run itself. As for weapons you want to bring, so the setup you'll see is what I'm going to use for most of the dungeon, but I will switch. I've got a Stasis Fusion Rifle on Riptide, a Void SMG Unforgiven, and the exotic sword, the Lament. I will switch off this loadout, so I recommend that you bring other things that you want to bring. Is a good machine gun. So I'm going to use Corrective Measure, but if you want to use like Chain of Command, 7-7 Saw, Fixed Odds if you've got a good one, whatever you want to use, but that's what I'm recommending that you use, right? So a machine gun, so we'll go that way. We'll keep on the SMG, and then we'll switch to Witherhoard. We'll take off the Stasis Fusion and go Witherhoard. That's what we'll run for Vault. And as I said, for the rest of all the other encounters, it's going to be as you see here. Armor mods is going to be lean to a sword build, so we're going to have helmet, ammo finders to match our weapons. We've got 2 charged up, so that's 2 solar pieces to give us ×4 charge with light, because you get an extra stack each, right? So that's ×4 in total. We've got Overload SMG, Fusion Rifle Loader. Overload SMG works on all enemies in the game, so that's why I'm using it. Solar Resist Arc Damage Resistance is on to pair with Loosened Blade, so we get the secondary perk of that. That's the reason. And it's a trifecta of resistances. I will mess around with resistance on one of the encounters though. Sword Scavenger on the boots, Reap and Well Maker, so that we get a elemental well when we do after our barricade, our next weapon kill. Any weapon kill, doesn't have to be void, will give us a well, as I said, and then we'll get elemental charge, which gives us charge of light, which then gives us Loosened Blade, and we'll have the ×4 stack. We also have double utility kickstart, a stasis class item, right? Comes in really handy on this setup. In particular, the stats I recommend is the highest resilience you can go, high recovery, high discipline. This is what I recommend for this setup that I'm doing right now. So that's the weapons and stuff I recommend that you bring. So for view and pleasure, I'm going to speed up all the transition phases. So between, say for example, Gahlran to Vault or Vault to Caiatl, all that stuff sped up ×2, just for time's sake. So if someone is watching and don't know the route, they can easily follow that. If you do know the route anyways, you can just skip to the timestamps that you want to see, because that's what these videos really are for. It's not designed for you to watch the whole thing. However, if you do watch the whole thing, appreciate it. It helps out the algorithm massively. But it helps me out as well, because there's less commentary to do, because there's nothing for me to tell you. You're just following the route on screen. All right? What you're here for is Gahlran, Vault, and Caiatl, the solo for the Titan. Now, as I said, you can do this on Solar Titan. It's extremely strong. The reason why I'm not doing it is because there's plenty of videos out there of Solar Titan in this dungeon. I don't think I need to add anything else to what people have already done. They've solo one phase Gahlran with tractor cannon, round flames, you know, with the hammer setup. They've done all that stuff. You know, I don't think I need to add to that sector, but what I think I do need to, or I wanted to try, is a different class other than Solar in this dungeon on a Titan, because this will simulate how this is going to be next season. Because this dungeon's very hard as it is, despite us having one of the best mods ever in the history of Destiny Class of Restoration, it's still difficult, even with that mod. So how difficult is it going to be without that stuff? Well, you can still make things work. I'm not saying that this run was super difficult. It was a little difficult getting used to not using Classic Restoration, I must admit. But as I said, I wanted to sort of do the Titan on something that's less powerful, because I don't always go in for the best stuff. If you've been watching me for a long time, you'll know I don't always use the absolute meta stuff. So, with the Gahlran fight, I've spoke at length about it in other videos, but I'll just sort of go over the things I've already said about it. You need to pick obviously 2 symbols up. So the basic mechanics are, there's the mirror world and the standard world. You shoot the bell to go into the mirror world, and then there's 4 corners of the map where these standard bearers spawn. You need to pick up those symbols. The mistake that people make is that they pick up both symbols and they don't do one symbol at a time. They try to do both. This then gives you less time for boss damage, so don't do it. I do it later on in the fight because I'm confident that I can sort of just kill the boss anyways. But for the very first phase, at the very least, do this little technique that I'm showing you. You'll be able to do far more damage. It might be only 15 seconds, but that's a huge amount of time. 15 seconds extra on the boss is a huge amount of time for damage, right? Because you'll find that your damage isn't very good, especially if you start messing up the Nightmare Gahlrans, you know, and you didn't save a Scion on top of that. You're looking at 25 seconds for damage phase. If you really screw up, you know, by the time you get there and say the boss is ported and you don't know where he is, then you've lost more time. So this guarantees the free phase easier, right? Because that's what this fight set up. That's what this setup's set up for. Is for the free phase, not 2 phase. You struggle to get a 2 phase with Lament on this setup. Obviously, if you want a 1 phase, you'll be investing into Solar 3.0 and doing the tractor cannon setup with the. Trust me, I know all about that. I know I haven't made a video about it, but I do know how you sort of execute it. I'm not oblivious to it, so don't think that of me. I'm just doing it on a class that's more neutral, so that it explores the dungeon a bit better in how you actually play it. Because Classic Restoration is just a seasonal mod, and that's just they're experimental mods. That's why we've got this seasonal system. I think people don't realise that we've got a seasonal system. That's one of the reasons, so that they can make really OP mods and they don't have to balance them because they're gone. Once they're gone after the season, they can forget about it. So to them, it's handy. To us, it's handy as well. As long as they do decent mods every season, I'm all right with it. At times, as long as there's some good mods. So that was phase 1. You obviously need to do this twice because we're doing 2 symbols. We're doing 1 symbol all the time. As we've done the nightmares there, we need to look for our next symbol. So he's the symbol, because we cleared 2 Scions at the start, if you remember, but that then spawns in another Scion that or a standard essence bearer that you can kill on the DPS phase, which is what we're going to be coming up to. So we've got Cup. So I'll dunk Cup. Now there's 2. What I've worked out with this is, it's easier to leave, like don't dunk right away. Unless you're like in a hurry, don't dunk right away, because it's better, right, just to sort of clear your 2 bell bearers, because they keep respawning up. Obviously they need to, because it'd be impossible to do the encounter if they didn't. That's how you shoot the bell, to open the bell, should I say. But clear those first, then dunk, because the dunk gives you 2 sets of spawn of adds. It gives you the legionaries, but it also gives you this big Colossus and the war beasts. So this just means that you can come in here, chill, pretty much, and just take things out at your own pace. You don't need to spam your ammo. Don't spam sword ammo, by the way. Because of this build, you don't want to be spamming your sword, especially on phase 1 when you haven't even done any damage, because you're going to lose stacks with Charge of Light. Use it for movement, that's fine. If you want to get to somewhere zippy, right, do it, but Don't be using your sword and general adds. That's what your SMG's there for. That's why I recommend an SMG, because SMGs are really king. Sidearms are alright. If we had anti-bias sidearm, I would love it for Vault, but we don't, because it's still bugged. So that's why I recommend an SMG of your choice. There's no right or wrong, whatever you want. So see the extra sound I was on about. See the time gain you get. I'm over 1 minute 5 just there. Right, then we use the fusion. The job of Riptide is to take out all these adds. Right, now I usually use the Caiatl coordinate, the solar fusion rifle. I've got one with slide shot, slideways and what's the other mod? Vorpal, which does really well. But so does this one, because it freezes a lot of the enemies. Does less damage than my other fusion, but it's good. Right, I'm going to lead with a debuff throwing grenade, a debuff Vortex Grenade. That will then stack with Loosened Blade, so we can do more damage because of that, right? Then we'll pop a bubble because we get our grenade back, which means we get 2 debuffs, right? As long as you've saved a nade, right? So you don't start with your bubble right off the bat, right? And we're not really... We actually could have went back in my bubble for weapons. I didn't even bother with that because I could see how much damage I was doing. So that's a good chunk, 35, nearly 40% HP. The key is keeping pressure on that boss. If you're going to go swording him like this, you need to make sure you're keeping pressure on him, because he can just physic you into a wall, hit you into a wall and really kill you quick. So you need to keep constant pressure on him, and it's not too bad, the damage on him. Adds can hit you hard, obviously, because there's no classy restoration, so you've got to keep an eye on that. That's where Lament will come in, though. You'll out-heal that to some degree, but not entirely. If there's a lot of Cabal there, you might not survive. That's where the arc resist comes in, so I do recommend running at least 1 arc. I had 1 arc on anyways, because I need Loosened Blade. So that's where I think people go wrong, is that you want arc on for the legionaries, yes, but you want solar on as well for the snipers on the outside of the map, right? Because they are sniping you. Now it's worse at the bottom of the map, not where the stairs is, where I am right now, but on the other side I seem to get caught quite a lot more often than up here. So that's just an observation, because look, I've went past where the stairs were, and those snipers can't really hit me. There's a lot of cover, whereas here there's not much cover there, you can see on that other side. So pick and choose where you fight from is what I'm trying to say with it. So that's phase 1 anyways of damage. So as you can see, it's a good chunk. It's definitely not perfect. I didn't even go back into my bubble for weapons of light, and I had no stacks left. So, but if you do really optimize it, you could potentially two-phase with Lament. It would be really super tight. But you're not here to sort of impress yourself with damage and stuff. You're just here to get the emblem. Because this is what the video is aimed at, is for somebody who hasn't got it. Because as I said earlier, there's only 32,000 players with the emblem. Alright? And some of those clears are, to be fair, not correct. They were done with bugs, people bugging out enemy waves and stuff like that. So they're not even legit clears. So if you really dial into it, how many of those clears are legit? And then how many of those clears are classy restoration, which I'm guilty of using as well. So that's why I'm saying, that's why I was thinking, I want to do a run without that. I mean, I don't want to go silly and go Arc Titan, because Arc Titan would be terrible in this, even though it's a good subclass. It'd be awful, right? But I wanted to obviously do a class without solar, but something that's sensible. Which Sentinel is still super strong, and it's one of my favorite classes in the game. There's a Scion there you can see, but we're not going to clear him because this is phase 1. Just watch when you come out the door, especially on the bottom end of the map. He can just be waiting there for you, and you can, as I say, he could hit you off map. There's all sorts of things that can happen. So you got to have your wits about you when you're doing it. It does look pretty relaxed when I'm doing this, but there is things that you need to sort of, you know, look out for. I don't really need to clear out all the dogs as well, because you get the dogs. That's just a waste of time, really. You don't need to clear those out. Keep on top of your ads as well. You know, obviously you got the Nightmare Collapse and 60-second timer. I've got plenty of time to get my Standard Essence and clear some of the Legionaries, because they keep spawning when you clear the Scions in the Nightmare world, right? So it's the same deal. And that's why sometimes when you go out for damage, there's tons of adds because they stack on top of each other. There's no limit. Well, there will be a limit of how many adds can actually be in that room. But the limit could be 2 or 3 waves of legionaries, which could easily rack up if you're not clearing any of them. Because it's so easy to really just run past them, even on this class. Which I haven't really talked about the mechanics of how this works. So we've got Heart of Inmost, like the exotic chestplate. It gives you increased regen for the abilities that you haven't used. So if I pop a Barricade, I get more energy for melee and grenade. And if I use my grenade, I get more energy for the Barricade and the melee. So it's a really good combat loop, and I actually like using it on Solo 3.0 as well. This is a neutral exotic. It's the most powerful neutral exotic in the game for Titans. Like neutral exotic. Listen to the words, not just a powerful exotic. It's the neutral. What that means is it can be used on any class and do good on even on stasis if you want. So this is now DPS. We took out all the nightmares. Just get used to not using your primary. You got to spam your fusion. Make sure you're coming into this section with plenty of fusion rifle ammo. It takes 2 shots to take out. Generally about 2 shots each. For the bell bearers, make sure you do that first before you do damage. Don't make the mistake of doing that last. You need to be in the routine of melting them. Make sure that you do that. So we're doing our same thing as what we've done before. I'm going to pop a bubble in a minute. We've got less time on this one, damage wise. I didn't get a scion on this one, but that's fine. We've done exceptional damage. He's less than a third. I'm confident to get him on the next phase. So we'll go to our bell and then rinse and repeat from here. This is what takes runs so long. Like if you do it on a Solar Titan and you one phase and do that, it's so much quicker because it's just one phase, isn't it? There's less aggro overall. And if you can solo one phase Caiatl, that's even quicker. Obviously, right? But once you start to use things that aren't as effective, it's going to take more phases naturally, right? But I'm just preparing people for the worst when it's going to be more difficult next season, unless they do another OP regen resilience type mod. There's always a thing that they could do, that they might give us a resilience style mod. Who knows, they might do something like that where you get even more resilience. We don't know. It's no holds bar. Because no one expected Classy Restoration. I didn't expect Solo 3.0 to come like that, where you're literally just unkillable. Like, I thought that was for Void. I thought Void was meant to have that with like Devour. I didn't expect Solar to get to be like a tanky setup. I thought it was going to be like Melting Point and stuff like that from D1. I don't. Most of you might not know what Melting Point is, but I thought it was going to be like that style of thing, and Bike and Funeral. Which I wish they went that route with it a little bit more. I do like the restoration thing, don't get me wrong. And it's still good even without Classy Restoration, but I'm not disappointed with it. I think Solo 3.0 is amazing still. Especially on Titan. Titan's probably the strongest. And Hunters are really good. Warlock's been gutted. A lot of Warlock mains aren't Warlock mains anymore. There's a lot that's just sort of fed up with it because Dawnblade's been gutted, really. Dawnblade's the worst class in the game almost. It's got to that point. It's like it's on Stormcaller level now. It's very poor. Whenever you're doing for the essence, I always make sure I've got a barricade as well. Just little things like that, because I've got an overshield, so that if there's anything that does go wrong, I've got that extra overshield, to be able to tank damage. Obviously, the 100 resilience is going to be helping me out massively with this. Not only with more barricades, because barricades are linked to resilience stat, but it's also going to help out with getting more Bastion shields and tanking the damage. Just in general, because of how it's 40% damage reduction. So you could pair that with, if you didn't want to go Lucent Blade and you wanted to go over the top, you could go like Strike and Light, stuff like that, Protective Light. You could go that route if you want. I know they nerfed Protective Light, but it's still good. Because, I mean, any resistance mods are good now because of how it works. Try and stay on top of these Gahlrans because they really can knock you about if you let them. So you really need to. That's where this fusion's really good. I mean, Caiatl I feel was a little better because it's got Vorpal. So it's a little better because it guarantees one-shotting them more often, whereas this fusion I need to be a little closer. But it literally is really good, this fusion, and it's gonna be more of a nightfall weapon for me for barriers. I've already made a video about that. I think some people are confused about this weapon. It is gonna work on champs, 100%. I've already proved that it will on 1590s. A lot of people were unhappy with that. I don't know why some people were unhappy because they said I was 1590. I tested a 1590 champion. Some people can't be pleased. If I was to do that at 1580 test, you know, if I was 1580 power testing on a 1590 champ, it would be the same result. My point is, chill clip freezes champs, and people are unaware of this, so I'm going to make a video about it. Whether someone knows about it or not, I'm not going to change for one man. I don't change for one man. I'll look at what the majority of the player base knows and doesn't know, and that's something that I know that they don't know. The majority of players. Some of the other players, keen-eyed players, knew this going into it, like when Deliverance came out. When Deliverance came out, you could craft it with the chill clip. People are aware of it. But as I said, that's not everyone. And on my mind's everyone, whether what they know or don't. So you need to, you know, understand that if you already knew it, you already knew it. That's fine. There's no need for you to complain to me about that you knew and you're unhappy that I made a video about it. I couldn't really care. I'm not here to micromanage people like that. So I will just ignore you. People like that. So we're on the final phase. Make sure you're always facing the way the exit is, right? Because it's easy to lose your bearings. So obviously not for me now, but when I first started this, because everything's red, it's hard to see where the doors are and stuff like that. So just think about it, like if you're at Cup, you need to start running to your right because you're going to head to the bottom of the map, or vice versa, right? It's common sense, but you might get caught up in the moment. That's all I'm saying. This is final phase of damage. Pretty simple. I don't even really need to pop bubble, to be honest. I do anyways though, because I want another debuff. That's what's really good about that, is that you get your nade back when you pop your bubble, right? It's just really handy. But that's just I mean, there's nothing difficult about what I've just done there. Maybe the hardest thing's probably the nightmares for people. But just keep on top of them. That's why I recommend the fusion. A glaive's really good in this with the mod. It doubles your essence. You know, you could go that route and maybe squeeze out a solo Toothers with this setup if you ran a glaive and you were quicker at clearing all your stuff. You know, you could just about squeeze it out. I could see that happening. But as I said, I'm here just for a comfortable clear for Titans, and I'm not doing it on solo. So this is just sped up at your convenience. Really, that's all it is. I would recommend, if you're struggling with the Titan jump wise, use Lion Ramparts. I'm going to swap to it now for one jump coming up because I don't trust this jump coming up. You can make it on a Titan, this jump coming up, because the Titan has a really good jump overall in terms of how much distance it covers compared to the Hunter. The Hunter's terrible. Warlock's obviously good. Warlock's more of a slower version of the Titan jump. I've said this a couple of times, but Titans have the best jump in the game. Not saying that they have a best jump for me personally, just in general. They have the best movement in the game overall. However, they've struggled with survivability builds until Void 3.0 and Solar 3.0 come out. So Titans have now become, Warlocks were number one for years and years. Hunters were always unique with what they done. They always had something, but they were never always top. But certain things like invis builds were always, you know, handy and over the years. But the Titan was always the weakest class, solo-wise. But the Titan's now starting to creep up to be, right, well, is it worth just maining Titan? Now, for me, it doesn't matter. I main all three. I have to for videos and stuff. But people will be starting to sort of lean towards playing Titan. And even Hunter. Hunters this season's amazing with the Blade Barrage and stuff. So I'm changing some mods up to reflect what I'm using, right? So I'm using SMG loader now this time because I've took the fusion rifle off. I'm going to go with the exotic grain launcher Witherhoard, right? So we're going to go Witherhoard, SMG, and a machine gun, like I said at the start of the video. So make sure that you brought one with you. If you haven't, transfer it on the phone app or DIM, whatever you use. But I highly recommend a machine gun because You could go with like an exotic primary and go that way, or Ariana's Vow. I've tried Ariana's Vow. Ariana's Vow is terrible for this. I don't know why people love it. It is it's terrible. It does do one shots the ads and stuff like that. It's all right, but when you're out here doing damage to bosses, it's terrible. You're getting flinched, left and right. It's a critical hit weapon. I tried the Ariana's Vow, and I've actually done it with Ariana's Vow. And personal experience, I didn't like it. I would prefer the machine gun, because this fight is a fight that you need to survive in. It's not DPS heavy too much. It's more about clearing ads. And the best sort of weapons in the game for doing that are machine guns, especially with the buff. So what you want to prioritize when you come into these rooms, if you've got a nade, that helps out massively. So maybe be checking that. But you want to be having your machine gun out the entire time, because you are timed harshly. The Vault encounter, in my opinion, is the harshest encounter, especially on Master. Especially on Master, the solo aspect of it. Teams are struggling hell, even teams. But for the Legend, it's fine. The solo, it's just like if something goes wrong, you get booped or you get blinded for too long, and the ads are hiding. That's another thing. You need to push the ads, because they will de-aggro. There's a thing called aggro in ads, and then de-aggro. The de-aggro means the ads hide. They're scared from you, right? So you need to sort of push them. You need to give them reason to push you a little bit. Because if you push all the way up and kill the Colossus first, some of the ads will hide behind pillars, wasting you valuable time. And sometimes you'll see the clears that I'm coming out of this vault, it's like 10 seconds left, which is comfortable. But imagine something goes wrong in general, then my 10-second free leeway or 15-second leeway is cut in half, right? So it's one of those things where you've got to really optimize. That's why I always run a machine gun on this. You don't really need to be using anything else. On Master it's different because there's barrier champions, but this isn't a Master video, so I won't talk about that too much. For Legend, which is what I highly recommend you get your soul force off anyways, is a machine gun all day. Witherhoard will do that damage over time for you when you have to deal with the ultras, because there's 3 ultras to deal with. So there's 6 symbols in total. 2 symbols. So we're on our 2nd symbol now. We'll then dunk that. We'll have an ultra, as I said, which the ultras change. So it's like a Centurion, just a standard Centurion, I think. And then it's like an unstoppable type enemy. And then it's like a Centurion that goes in the air at the very end of Solar Shield. So the burns change on the shields, but that's not a problem. If at any point as well, if you're getting sniped, there's a sniper just to my left. If you're getting constantly sniped by him, he's hitting you, maybe pop a barricade halfway just so that you don't die on the way when you're going towards the bell bearers, because that's your next goal, obviously, is to take the bell bearers. But if you do everything consistently, you're living here with 20 seconds, so that's just the power of using an LMG. Because it's clear what the problem is. Don't get me wrong, the problem is the phalanxes. Now, my loadout would change a little bit if it was anti-barrier sidearm, because barrier sidearm would absolutely melt the phalanxes. A pulse would also, but it's too slow, the pulse. Like, even Outbreak, it would be too slow for what we're doing here. But if I could run like a Drang with anti-barrier sidearm, then I would take a machine gun off and maybe run a sword. But anti-barrier sidearm is bugged still, as far as I'm aware, and you can't do it. I could see a good sidearm really doing well on that, but as I said, it's a case of can't. And there's no barrier sidearm exotic-wise that has barrier built within it. And there is the Ariana's Vow, but as I've just said to you, I don't really like the play. Ariana's Vow is a relic of a weapon. It's not something I use anymore at all. Arbalest filled that spot for me, because I actually really spammed Ariana's Vow when it first came out. So it's a case of we're just cycling our abilities to make sure we're getting our debuffs up as much as possible, so that we can just keep debuffing and Witherhoarding the boss. If we get a body shot, then we'll just spam our primary. But keep an eye on your HP as well, because this is where you're going to get, melted quite a bit. You want double arc resist for this. I haven't mentioned. You want double arc resist. You don't need solo because there's only literally one sniper that bothers you, and that's in the mirror world, and he can be easily out-dodged. All these ads are doing arc. They're spamming you with arc. The Centurion will do a little bit of solo, but it's arc that you're going to get melted off. So I recommend, because of that, double arc resist, 100% resilience, and you'll find this to be an easier encounter than, you know, what it maybe feels like at times. It's all about the resistance. Like, I'm not getting hit that hard. I'm getting hit quite often by the ads, you'll notice, but not that hard. So we'll go for our bell bearers. One Witherhoard shot as well will one-shot the bell bearers. This SMG I haven't spoke about much. It's got Demolitionist, Adrenaline Junkie on it, which is an amazing role for this. I'm getting more nades up. If I wasn't getting a lot of grenades, I'm getting even more, and I haven't even got tier 100% on Discipline. I've only got tier 8. The build works. I'm happy enough with it because I'm getting my abilities when I want. The main aspect, I suppose, is the high recovery. Definitely, we still want high recover and the high resilience. Another tip as well is when you go into these rooms, make sure you're jumping over to that room as you've shot that bell. So as soon as you shoot that bell, start running in the direction of where you need to go. All these little things add up. Oh, these ads pushed me perfect. That's fine. Sometimes it's not always like that. Sometimes, as I said, if you just rush for the Colossus, some of the ads, if you push up too far, will actually start hiding behind these pillars, wasting your time. It's the cover mechanic that ads do, right? And it's just the sort of thing where you lose so much time because you've got to really push them to find where they are, and then you've got to come back to get that solar shield to then pick up the symbol, and then that's where things can snowball out of your control. Then the bell bearers could be out of position because they sort of hide underneath, but they don't sometimes hide where you want them to, and they're on the opposite sides. You've got to, you know, go to them. That's why you just spam LMG as much as possible, and generally 9 times out of 10 you'll be fine with it. It does feel a bit of a long encounter, this. Like Gahlran's fine, like lengthwise, even though it's only 3 phase. Caiatl feels fine, but if you go into like 4 phases, like a solo 4 phase, it feels like a long fight. 3 phases isn't too bad, 2 phases isn't too bad. Obviously you can 1 phase, the better, but they're alright. I think the vault encounters actually for solo is balanced quite badly because I don't know why the Nightmare collapsing is such a short time. I mean, I don't know why they couldn't have just balanced it where team it was 60 seconds and then solo it was 1 minute and 30. I do feel as though it's a little harsh with the way the timer is. I mean, imagine doing Master. Like, I haven't attempted Vault on Master. I've done Gahlran Master solo. I haven't attempted Vault, but the timing must be so tight. They're all Void Shields. There's a barrier champion to take. There's Phalanxes. You know, and it's still the same time, 60 seconds or whatever. And now I know you get extra time when you clear each major or whatever. I feel as though it's badly balanced for solo. And I'm quite experienced with the solo to say that. I've done a lot of solo challenges over the years, so I know when something's overbalanced or underbalanced sort of thing. Because as I say, I've played all the Nightfalls, I've played all the dungeons, I've done a lot of solo challenges. The channel's been up for a good couple of years. It's not like I'm just new to it. So, you know, I sort of know when Bungie makes something, I sort of know it's out of balance, it's a bit out of whack. It's just kind of like what Grasp of Avarice is kind of with the riches, where it's like 60 riches per phase. That was something that was a little too high as well, and it puts people off doing them. In actual fact, it puts people to actually only do it once and never do it again. What you're going to realise with me is I'm doing these season upon season constant. So for somebody like this, to me, it's a little bit more annoying because I'm going through it over and over. But you get a good following from that. People request that, so I'm going to do that. I want to give people what they want, right? For me, what I like doing is doing it with different loadouts and stuff like that. That's where this dungeon is a bit of a problem because there's not a lot of room for different loadouts too much solo-wise. Team-wise there is. Team-wise, there's always going to be that variation because there's 3 of you. Simple as that. So anything can sort of work. Then it just depends on your team's skill and stuff like that. But solo, I mean, imagine doing like blue weapons. Imagine doing like unique exotics in this, because that's generally what I do with the other dungeons. You know, imagine using like a bad loadout, but as a challenge. In this dungeon, it's just like, I'm not saying it's not possible, and we'll look into that as the dungeon gets older in its lifespan, but right now, I'm not seeing a lot of different alternative loadouts. You know, solo-wise, I'm always talking the solo perspective. You know, it's kind of like, well, what's good, right? Linears are alright on Caiatl. I still don't really, a huge fan of them for solo, but if you've got a really good role, you can do it, so alright, that's decent. Lament's obviously king, I think, so that's good. Witherhoard's really good in this, you know. Solar Titan's really good in this. Blade Barrage is good in this, but that's more the subclass itself doing a lot of work for you. But as I said, if you started using some derpy weapons, you're not going to get far with this. So it's a little strict in how it is, just because, I mean, you've got 6 bell bearers to take out on DBS. I'm fine with it. It's just a lot of things that can go wrong as well. So it's not just a thing. Generally, when you're just doing DPS to a boss in a dungeon, most of them, it's pretty relaxed. People argue Prophecy's not, but to me it is, because I'm not used to it. But I actually quite like. I actually think it's the best boss fight in Destiny 2, like of all time. Not the best fight of all time in Destiny. Actually, that's Axis from Wrath of the Machine, but in Destiny 2, Kel Echo, whatever, is the best boss fight in the game, hands down. It's just that good to me. That's how high I regard that. That's like a S plus 10 out of 10. There's a lot of room for different types of things to be used, but you are rewarded if you use the best stuff. The damage phase is long. It's a minute plus. A lot of these new dungeons, they're like 30 seconds. Damage windows are far too short. And that's what I don't like, where we're going with that, with the damage windows being too short. Grasp of Avarice suffers from the same thing, especially, and it's even worse when you start doing the master difficulties. It's even worse. You're looking at 4-phase solo, even a good player. So imagine a player who's not used to it, it's going to be less. In actual fact, they're not going to do it. They're just going to say, screw it, I'll do it with a team, I just won't do it at all. So it puts people off. But I understand they need to be at the right difficulty for people to sort of aspire to them. I understand that, but some of the mechanics are drawn out to the point where you get a little tired. It's more of an endurance fight rather than how difficult it is or something. Some of them, at least. So we're on the, I think we're on the final symbol here. Go for the bell bearers. The biggest thing with this setup is make sure that you're cycling your abilities as much as possible. You need to be keeping an eye on that as much as you can. Try to clear out some ads as well. Don't just leave and ignore ads. You know, like, try and clear out some of them. You don't need to clear out a lot, but make sure that you do between phases, because they can stack up, and that's where you get your wipes. So we'll go for Axe. This is the final symbol. Make sure that your LMG is reloaded. That's a thing as well. If you don't reload your LMG and you start, man, it's like 5 seconds to reload an LMG, so that's lost your time right away. The biggest thing is not putting yourself under pressure, and once you do that, you start cutting corners. You know, if you put yourself under pressure, oh, well, I'll push, I'll be a bit more aggressive here, and that's when you get your mistakes. Be careful of the phalanxes as well. They one-shot. This is the thing. They one-shot you into a wall. They've always done that, phalanxes. This isn't something unique to Duality itself. So this is where you've got to play your distance with them. A sword is no go. Lament doesn't penetrate the shields, even though it should, because it's a barrier weapon, it doesn't. So swords are a no-go for using them on phalanxes. The sword's decent for outside, don't get me wrong, when you're doing damage to the ultras. You know, but for in here, I don't recommend the sword unless you're doing master and you need to clear out the champs. Then you would need an additional weapon to assist you with the phalanxes, whether it be a Waveframe GL. Forbearance, Explosive Personality, those weapons seem to excel on them because they can one-shot them very easily, and you don't need to worry about their shields because it'll hit their feet and one-shot them. So we use a bubble here to finish off this Centurion. My issue is with this is I kind of don't like it because this boss is just sort of, he's de-aggro completely, and the reason for that is because there's a lot of adds up. That's what a lot of these types of bosses will do. They're less likely to push if there's tons of adds, right? It's always, like, I always remember that from like Whisper of the Worm mission. If there was a tons of adds, the bosses would just sit in the bar, keep hitting you. But once a lot of the adds are taken care of, those sort of bosses would sort of push to you. Depending on which boss it was. I know there was one boss that would always push. They'd done the darkness walls. But it's weird how their AI works, but understanding stuff like that helps out. Like, there's less adds, so now he's starting to push a little bit, which is in my favour. I need him to push, because I haven't really got any decent weapons at long range, really. I need him to push a bit more, so I can get plenty of debuffs off. This is where the sword would help out massively, obviously, but I still don't value having it on. I'd rather have the machine gun. We've got a bit of machine gun ammo here. I'll pop a barricade at the stairs as well. Get a reload. All unholstered machine gun would work out really good as well. I've got one with 7/7 saw, which is, well, I've got a couple to be honest, so that would be decent. We've got our final bubble here, so we'll just finish the boss off, and that's the vault encounter done. So it's pretty straightforward. It's just it's an endurance fight, this, because you've got to get one symbol at a time. I don't know why. Like I said, they should be giving us a little more time, so you could at the very least challenge to try and get 2. I mean, you can get 2, but that involves a cheese, which is unintended, and I don't look at that stuff. When I see people, they'll do a cheese to sort of like jump across with a sword and stuff. That was never intended when they designed it. So I tend not to go with stuff like that. Depends what it is, really. Like, dungeon-wise, I don't really play a lot of them anyways, really. Just mainly just doing the clears on them. I don't really like speedrun them and stuff like that. But they should have made it so that you could at least challenge to get 2 standard essences in one run, solo at least. Because they have said dungeons are made for solo players first, team second. It is meant to be a solo experience first. They said that. That's the words from them when they showed us Shattered Throne. They done a stream about Shattered Throne, and they said it was a very interesting, one of the most interesting streams I've seen them do, actually. So with that mindset, that, you know, you'd think they're still going that way, and they are, but because Duality isn't like super tough, it is and it isn't. It just depends. Things can snowball quickly. If everything goes to plan, you're all right. It's just if things, as I say, go against you. The backpacks are a huge problem. Physics are a bit of a problem. It's not so much that they're a problem in this dungeon. They are a problem in the game, right? I think people aren't, like I say, I've said this before. Phalanxes have been one-shotting me since 2017 Leviathan. Prestige Leviathan, they've been doing it since then. The backpacks, they've been a problem. So all that stuff's been a problem. But to be honest, I think it's intended that these enemies are one-shotting us the way they do. Because if it wasn't, they would have patched it out since 2017, because we're now 2022, and they've never touched them. So obviously it's intended. So this is just how we play the game, I guess, when we're against Cabal. So we'll switch all our mods to match what we're going to be using now. So I'll do that. So we've switched all our mods, as I was saying. I've switched my loadout back to what I was using for Gahlran. The Riptide, Stasis Fusion, the Void SMG, and Lament. Be careful not to start the fight up. If you go past the stairs, it starts up, so be careful on the drop down. That would be kind of a disaster if you started up with no ammo. It wouldn't be too bad because you have an opportunity, like with all the dungeons, to farm up more ammo. But as I said, you don't want to do that, so make sure you get your banner in. And the first job that you want to do is learn a routine with this fight. So the first thing is establish what symbols you need to take. Now obviously it's just learning mechanics from what we've seen so far. It's just throwing more stuff at you, right? So more bell bearers, more snipers, a boss that's actively there all the time shooting you. So it's just everything but times 10. So now you've got your dream world, so I'm going to establish which route I'm taking. So what you need to understand is, the quicker you go and get your bearers, the snipers, the less likely you are to be stunned by the Colossus. The Colossus do their arc stuff that blinds you, right? Now it actually debuffs Solar because it gets rid of their restoration. Whether that's intended, I don't know, but it seems that it might be. I'm not 100%. But it's actually getting rid of that debuff. It slows you. Right, so it's a thing of you need to plan. So you need to look at what symbols you've got. Right now, if it's simple, like something like dog and cup. Right, that's the two back symbols. Now, the way I would do it is I would do one of them and then go to middle. Because as you spawn in, you will spawn kill the Scion before that Colossus can blind you. By the time, if you get the timing down, you'll then jump over the middle, missing his arc shot. The Colossus will then start to do his blast attack. This is on a timer. He'll then do another blinding shot. But if you immediately, say if you jump from dog to cup, back to back, he'll blind you again on the second one, on cup. So the timing will be off. So that's why I do one Scion, then I go to the middle, take out a Bell Bearer, maybe all of them. Depends how I feel. Depends on my position. Depends on dogs. Where the Cabal backpacks are. Are they giving me aggravation? Like, are they booping me? Stuff like that. But I take a couple of them out, because as I'm taking them out, the Colossus does his blind attack at me in mid. But chances are you can miss it. If he does get you, it's not too critical, though. And then he's on a timer, right? He's not going to do another blinding shot like back to back like that. You can then go and get the next Scion. Now that's giving you a scenario if the symbols are on the same at the very back. That means you've got one Colossus that's aggroed on you the entire time. Now it's different if you take a different route. So say for example you do dog and axe. So dog's bottom left, axe is top right. This is actually not a bad route, because you assuming you're going to be doing dog first, right? So you'll do dog first, you'll spawn kill, you'll miss the Colossus' arc attack. You'll jump through middle, take out a Bellbearer or two, and then immediately go to the axe. But as you're sort of approaching axe, the Colossus at the very top will do his blinding move. The key is just not to be sitting on them perches while they're doing their blinding move at you, right? Now, if you do get caught by it, it's not too bad, because you've got arc resist on. I've got arc resist, but I've also got solar resist on as well. So I believe this is probably the best resistance that you could do, because I mean double solar's handy as well, if I'm being honest, but it depends on your boss strat. This is where things change. Now I'm sort of micromanaging resistance, you see, because this is sometimes what it comes down to. Like, this can be sometimes a difference. If you don't choose the right resistance and you die, like, well, you could have survived if you'd had the right resistance on. So if you're going to do the cheese where you go in the boss early for damage, you get double snipers, right? You get extra snipers, far more snipers than general, because the game thinks you're tricking the game. It thinks you're going in the nightmare realm to go and get some bearers, but you've already done the 4 bearers, because it's 4 bearers per phase. So the game spawns in those essence bearers. So they're going to snipe you. Now, if you're going to do that strat, I highly recommend double solar resist. Because then you really are, like, if you're on solar 3.0, it's fine, but, you know, for the most part. But I recommend you do the solar. Now, if you do it normally, you won't get double snipers, but you'll get less time to deal with the backpacks. People like to go in sooner so you can spawn kill the 2 backpacks in middle, and even work on some of the others. Like, you have more than enough time to actually do that. But I'm under the sort of thing that could wipe you. The snipers could. Like, I haven't got double solar because I've got arc on to gel with my Lucent Blade build. So that's why I changed that subtle change, where on my other run, can't remember what run it was, it might have been my Warlock, I think it was Warlock Solar 3.0, I opted to go in, shoot the bell soon, so that I would go and kill the bell bearers quicker, get more snipers, but it's fine, because I'm on Solar 3.0, I've got classy restoration, etc. So you've really got to think, imagine, like, before you do it, would this kill me? What's the risk? I'm always calculating risk with everything that you're doing. Like right now, this is quite risk a little bit. So I'm going to pop my barricade and try and get some spawn kills on these Centurions. See, the Centurions are spawned by each plate that you dunk. So I recommend the safe, actual proper way to do this fight, like actual way, is to do one dunk at a time. Obviously get your 2 symbols, but get one dunk. Clear adds, all adds, scions, everything. Get the add level down in the room to like 10% low, because sometimes you'll see at times there's literally no adds because I've cleared them all. Then you'll get your next plate dunk, and then you'll get another wave of Centurions, because if you back-to-back dunk, right, dog and son or whatever it might be, you dunk them back-to-back, which can be done easily, you get so many Centurions and you get a lot of scions on top of that, and the sounds are infinite wave, a lot of snipers at you. A lot of them are snipers, so it's very dangerous if you do a double dunk back to back. On Solo 3.0 you can get away with it. On this you can get away with it, but it's risk, and you don't want to be risking a run that you might have been playing the dungeon 50 minutes to an hour. You don't want to be risking just because you think I'm going to do a double dunk and save myself 30 seconds. Yeah, you might save yourself 30 seconds, but you could also lose 50 minutes of a run and die. So think what's worse, losing 30 seconds or losing 50 minutes potentially. So the bell is primed. When you get your 4 dunks, obviously this is what I was on about. So you can actually shoot the towers, right, and then shoot the bell and get transported soon. But I'm not going to do that strat just because of what I've just went into great detail why I'm not doing it on this class. So I'm going to wait. I'm going to freeze these 2 champs, which Riptide's very good at doing. Now I'm looking where the boss is going. Straight away, as soon as you spawn kill the 2 bell bearers, look at where the boss is going. He's going middle, which is an easy rotation, to be honest. So we'll do that. I'll get a debuff on the boss. And then that's buffing with Lament's Loosened Blade. So I can get 2 big combos on in the 10-second damage. Because you get a 10-second damage window per bell, so 30 seconds in total. He's going right. Now he was being cumbersome and stomped me and stuff, so I went with the Lament. I've lost a stack of Charge of Light, but do I care? Not so much, because I'm going to get the damage in anyways. I'll get my Loosened Blade for this phase, so that's really good damage. Phase 2 bell, it's not too bad at all. Things has went according to plan. Then we'll go for the final bell. Obviously he's over here. Now I'm going to use the fusion instead, because I've got license to do it, because I'm far ahead of the boss. I'm going to pop a barricade, because the snipers will be doing active damage while I wait for this boss. And that's what you've got to sort of learn, is that while you're just sitting there, all the snipers are hitting you. Now if you're going to kill them, that's fine, but I'm not going to opt for that strat, because I haven't got the loadout on for it, and that takes up time. But if you just do your healing stuff in between while you're waiting for the boss, then that's the best bet. Now there's a lot of backpacks over right side. We'll call it right side. You can see there's at least 2 or 3, because I cleared them with the sword. See, here's the thing, when you clear the backpacks with body shot damage or anything else, their backpacks drop off their body and a movable object on the floor. Now if a sniper or if a boss if Caiatl stomps where those backpacks are, you take inflicted damage from that and it can kill you. One backpack won't on its own, but say that you get boss stomped, then sniped, and then a backpack explodes. Even with tier 100 resilience, you'll die off all that. And that can happen at DBS, and it's quite worrying, because you want the boss to stomp, because when you have the boss stomp, it slows her down. It means you're more chance to get your bell, shoot your bell before the boss. Because obviously if you miss the bell, you lose all damage, the boss goes back to here, and you start all over again. And it's quite a grind if you're losing damage phases because of stuff like that, where you're letting Caiatl get to the bell before you are. So that's why the sword's so good, because you can do the guard with the Lament, and you can negate the knockback damage that this boss has. It's not too bad, the knockback damage, because a lot of bosses are worse than this, but it is still quite bad enough to be booped off the map, because this nightmare world is basically there's a lot of places just to fall off. So this is what I was on about, planning your route. So I'm not going to go to the second essence yet. I'm going to deal with some backpacks first, then I'm going to get my Scion. Now if you notice, the time was slightly off, but I did still pick up that essence just before he started to blind me. Whereas if I'd went from perch to perch, as the Colossus sees me, the first thing he does is he does his blinding attack. Whereas if he sees me in mid, he'll blind me in mid, which I'd rather he done that. Because what you need to understand is with that attack, it's less accurate the further it is away. So that's the thing about it. Whereas if you're on that perch, it's dead accurate with it. Sometimes it can kill you on there. So that's something. And also get used to spawn killing your sounds fast. Don't be using the weapon primary. Use your fusion. Use whatever you're using. If you want to use a waveframe, use a waveframe, whatever it is. But kill them quick and get out of there. Try not to spam your sword too much. Your sword is for emergencies. I recommend that you sometimes use it when you're getting bad luck. It's sort of a bad luck protection having a sword on, because if you do get booped and blinded at the wrong place and you're low on HP, then just whipping out your Lament and melting down the two backpacks on that side is going to save your life. It's going to mean that you're going to have to farm up ammo later, but you've got opportunity to do that. You are in control of your ammo. I know there's RNG elements to ammo dropping and stuff. What I mean is you don't start a damage phase until you want. The funny thing is though, having said that, the opposite actually happens to me on this run. I actually start damage without realising it. Now the reason being is because these bells, when they're primed, the 4 towers, when they're primed, if they're damaged by some area of effect damage, like imagine Fusion Grenade Warlock, you know, you get a really good nade off on adds, and then it explodes right next to the bell, it activates the bell, and that can be catastrophic to your run. That could ruin you. Like you could be out, if you're spawned out of position for DPS, that can be huge. It could mean that you've screwed it all up. So that's what I'm on about. You got to be careful. And I didn't realize I could do it with the Void 3.0, but you can do it with that, because obviously everyone's had problems with the solar. Not with how bad it is, but actually how good it is, because it sets off bells when you don't want it. Sets off the towers. Whereas with Void, I wasn't 100%, but Void Grenade set it off. So the best thing to do is try not to fight in the outside realm when the bells are primed for too long. Try and get all your Centurions down. So I recommend that when you've got your 2 symbols, get 1 dunk. Clear out the adds that are associated to that dunk, the Centurions and stuff. Then, the better way of doing it, once the room's clear, get your 2nd dunk, shoot the bell immediately and get ready for damage. But only when you're ready, of course, and that way that removes any element of you being party to the boss damage when you didn't want it to happen. And that's a worrying thing, especially because all the purple that you see on the outside realm, that's all a death pit. So you could be just literally looking for ammo, minding your own business. You threw a grenade, you haven't looked. Next thing you know, you're partied. I've even seen adds damage the towers. Don't quote me on it, but I'm sure I've seen adds where they've damaged, and I've been partied randomly on it, like just thinking, why have I been partied? I haven't done anything. Like the bells were primed, but I was looking for ammo, farming adds, because you can farm them, and then I just get teleported random. And it's caught me off guard. It's like, well, why did that happen? Don't know. Maybe the Centurions are shooting the bell and it's damaging them. I'm not sure. But that's because of what I've said. If you do what I'm saying, you get the last dunk at the end when all the adds are clear. Then shoot the bell, because you have that 5-second time to shoot the bell where there's no adds, and then it gives you time to go to middle and get partied. That's the best way of doing it. So like right now, let's clear all the adds, then get the last dunk. But on this particular run, I decided to, with the Warbeast symbol after that, clear the adds again, because I was playing it super safe, but I shouldn't have done that. But the only reason why I was thinking is I didn't want to sort of, Because if the more phases of ads that you skip, the more ads you've got this to clear later on. So yeah, after boss damage, you know, you're safe, you're doing boss damage, but when you come back here, you've got all this to deal with again. And on the top of that, you're going to get 6 fresh bell bearers. So it can be quite dangerous when you're coming back after a damage phase. So, but on the after this phase, I don't do what I've done. You're going to see it coming up shortly. I use a Void Nade on like a Centurion. If I had a longer range weapon on, this playing on this perch area would have been good, because I can just sit behind my barricade and literally like scout all the enemies down, but I had an SMG on. Don't get me wrong, the SMG is probably still the best weapon you can use in this, I think. Scouts aren't bad. Scouts are good as well, because you can literally just sit at the back of the map and use that. They're just not very good if you have to deal with a bell bearer quickly, whereas an SMG is good at that, because sometimes there might be an occasion where you need that, you know. So this is where I got ported. I've got no loosened blade, nothing, so I'm just going to use my sword, because my damage is screwed anyways. I got ported and didn't want to be ported. I'll use a bubble here, debuff as well, and get some damage in what I can. This is still a comfortable free phase as well. We do actually good damage despite not having loosened blade. We actually do alright. If he goes right or left, always come to middle to see if he's going to go mid, or she's going to go mid. I keep saying the wrong gender. But because I was worrying about loosened, I didn't have loosened blades, so I just used my sword anyways. It didn't matter. This is really good damage though, despite me not having the loosened. I've actually done alright. It's because of the debuff, you see, because I can debuff the boss with a nade and stuff. So it's handy. I was trying to explode some of the backpacks. There's a worrying amount of backpacks on right hand side. They're mounting up, and it's because I've been using Lament. So that's the downside of sword and these backpacks. See, the fusion rifle disintegrates them. It also disintegrates their backpack, which makes the fusion so good. But you know, I was just wanting to make sure that I didn't mess up on damage. So there might, you know, times when I did use the fusion. And also I wasn't on solo with classy restoration, stuff like that. So you've really got to sort of pay attention to the boss. Always cut the boss off the route as well. So like when you clear your 2 middle bell bearers, if she's gonna go left and right. Rather than there's like these 2 pillars, go around the pillars where the boss route is taken, so that the boss will stomp you. You want the boss to stomp you, giving you valuable time to kill the bell bearers. Now there's multiple ways of taking them out on DBS. I've seen people use Lawrence Driver, Arbalist, even someone mentioned a trace rifle. Experiment. If the fusion's not working for you, then experiment with some other weapon. Like, I can see Arbalist being decent because you can one-shot them from a range, so I could see that weapon being useful, but you know, that would be a different style of run, because you would go Arbalist, then Storm Chaser or Cataclysmic, whatever it might be, and then go that route with it. This route's more of a foolproof run. Well, it would be if I was on solo, but obviously I've explained why I'm not doing it on solo. Doing it on Void instead. There's still time. I mean, I can do a run before the season ends. I can always do a run on the solo as well. You know, but if I'm being honest, I'm sort of dungeoned out. I'm sort of a little bit, you know, we've had the dungeon. I've played it for a couple of weeks now. I'm sort of ready for some GMs. The GMs this season aren't difficult, but I can personally make them harder than what they are with loadouts and stuff, so I'll be experimenting with that. We've got some unique mods this season, like Overload Trace, stuff like that. Barrier sidearm when they fix it. You know, so, and obviously it's Solo 3.0, and I want to see how good resilience, like 100% resilience is in GM. So I'm looking forward more to that, if I'm being honest at the minute. I'm sort of dungeoned out, because I've actually played all the dungeons at the start of this season. Grasp, we made a video on Grasp. The only one I haven't made a video on this season is Pit. Pit's straightforward anyway, so I will cover pit again. I go through, you know, a routine of going through them all eventually. I just don't do them all at once because it's too much in terms of me getting bored with it. It's too much in terms of uploading. Like I couldn't see myself doing like 3 pits in 1 week for videos because it wouldn't feel fresh to me because the commentary would be the same literally on all 3 runs. So that's why I like to sort of spread them out. I don't like to just sort of do them all in one chunk and say here it is. Sort of see how I feel week upon week. You know, maybe 1 week I fancy doing a prophecy. I try and link it as well to the weekly rotator because there's weekly rotating dungeons. So next week's gonna be, I'm not sure. I think it's I would assume it's Shattered Throne next week. I actually don't even have a clue what it is next week. But yeah, I'm assuming it's Shattered Throne. So you know that might spike my interest more for video purposes. You know, I might want to. Oh, I'll do a quick Shattered Throne because it's pinnacle for people. So there's spark their interest. It sparks my interest, especially if I find like a build. I'm going to use a bubble here just because I could see that I was going to get double booped there in midair as I was jumping over to those 2 backpacks. So I probably didn't need to do what I'd done, but I was just doing that to guarantee the run because the boss's HP is like below 1/3. It would be sad for me to wipe it just because I'm trying to do things fast or whatever. So there's literally no point. There's a lot of backpacks. That's my main worry right now, but I'm not getting any time to. So that's where Witherhoard would be good because I'm not getting much time to sort of shoot those backpacks when I'm there. What I could do. What I could do is actually go in there with the intention of just shooting all the exploders. But we wrote it out anyways. I was just super observant, making sure that I wasn't close to the backpacks because they were mainly on right. There's 1 or 2 in mid, I think, but it was mainly on the right side because that's where I'd used my Lament. So this is what I was on about before. We'll get our dunk. Like the next dunk that we get is the last wave of ads I'm clearing, because on the final dunk, as I dunk the final one, so it'll be War Beast, I'll immediately shoot the bell. Did you see that? My nade went through that door. My I'll shoot the bell as I dunk War Beast. That will then spawn in the Centurions, but I'm not planning on coming back here anyway, so I'm not going to be dealing with them. I'll obviously be just finishing the boss off at this point. It's safe to be said, obviously make sure you got plenty of ammo per damage phase. I mean 50 to max sword ammo is probably recommended because you may be you may have to pull it out on the backpacks depending on what happens. You know, depending on how hard you're getting hit by snipers and stuff. And depending on which way the boss goes, is the boss stomping you, you know, stuff like that. And also farm up your charge with light. See, on phase 2 I didn't have that opportunity. I was in the middle of doing it, but then my void nade set the thing off. Okay, so we're good for damage. I was going to farm a bubble, but I just thought I don't need it. I'm alright. Because I'm not too fussed. I've got my barricade, so I'm happy enough with that. And my ×4 stacks with light, charge with light. This is what's good about Riptide. It's freezing them, so they're not booping me. I'm even going to use a nade here. I would generally save it for the boss, but boss damage requirements aren't needed, and the void nade destroys. See, I was really worried about this side because there's so many backpacks on the floor. So rather than like go to them and try and kill them with the sword, the boss might stomp behind me and set off all the backpacks. So that's why I use the nade to quickly deal with that situation, because I could foresee that being a wipe. He's going the side I didn't expect, so we use another nade. Bit of sword here, and then this is where the fight finishes. So this is the solo flawless duality on a Void 3.0 class rather than solar on a Titan. I hope you enjoy. Thank you.